Hi, I'm Billy Powers, and my co host Faith Brashear. We have Whistleblower Pie platform. And today we have Lady Hawk, who we're producing her show. And Lady Hawk today, this is her second episode. And the first one, wow, lots of good information, Miss Lady Hawk. Today we're going to be talking about the trafficking and sale of unendorsed notes. Welcome, Lady Hawk. It's good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Billy. This is Renee Wyler. I'm Lady Hawk, and let's talk today about the sale of unendorsed notes by Wall Street banks and why they were selling notes that weren't fully endorsed. In fact, if you ever pay off your mortgage, you will not ever receive that note saying paid in full like you used to in the good old days when you paid off your mortgage and you got that note back and it said paid. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that tangible document. All we have is electronic records of our, I should say, intangible electronic records, and we don't have our tangible paper wedding signature note because those were long gone. They were shredded. You were never going to see them again. And so, what I was able to do with Fidelity National Finance and the subpoena I got from them is I was able to see that the note that came back to my mortgage company, it said Wyler Mortgage Group LLC is the lender, and I could see that there's a stamp in the corner from the title attorney saying this is an original copy of the original stamped on there, and she's got her signature on that. And later we would see that note that was copied, the electronic document, the intangible electronic document was uploaded by the electronic agent MERS. And we're going to talk more about MERS and MERS the imposter. Billy, can you tell us about the lawsuit that we just became privy to regarding MERS?
Yeah, isn't that fun? And this lawsuit was going on in 2017 again while our first impression case was going on, and dozens of parties were coming in from across the country to enjoin in a civil joinder of criminal action. MERS was the MERS patent was suing MERS. One of the entities was a very huge name on most every countrywide loan document that I saw, and it was called Mortgage Electronic Registration System with MERS in parentheses. That was one of the literally claimed bogus companies. So I know for a fact, you can only imagine how many thousands upon thousands of documents have mortgage electronic registration system with MERS in the brackets on all of their documents, because that was a huge name on documents back in 2004, 3 to 7, 8,
So
even in 2009.
how do we
So yeah, it was.
know how do we know which version of MERS is on our documents? The imposter
Mhm.
or the real entity? And I understand that the real entity, whichever one that is, has a patent and a
Yeah.
security agreement. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, another security agreement. Well, now you remember we had the patent, and,
Yes.
that had come out the and that explain a little bit about that, because I that was an interesting, find for you with
Well,
the IRS and
thanks to,
Treasury.
we must give our props to Bruce Soloway, the vice president of Wyler Mortgage Group, because he's the one that located the MERS patent and trademark. And
Mhm.
what we found out is that MERS has a secret security agreement through their trademark, um, that asserts that MERS is in fact the borrower in big bold letters. MERS is the borrower, and Nations Bank NA is the bank. Now, as a broker, as a mortgage broker, I was not privy to any of that, and I did not disclose that to any of my mortgagors. They did not know. And this sounds like a violation of RESPA at the least. They did
Oh,
not
it's
know that
more
they
than
were.
that because again, this is not only a violation of REST, but this goes right down to the violation of every land law and rule, any integrity of our legal system here. It goes against everything that we know because what happens here is these documents are full of bogus companies. Bank of New York Mellon trustee, for instance. We've got a bunch of bank NAs. And remember, you and I, we as men, women, are the member bank. We are the member bank. So we're actually lending our own credits. And that's a whole nother show. But as the member bank, but yet MERS is borrowing. So who are they borrowing from? The member bank. So that was a real tell. And the patent itself had held all of the information on the interested parties on the patent. And it went on and on, including the Treasury. We saw, wasn't it, many of the banks' names listed.
Yes, and
Um,
I actually saw HSBC Bank as an assigner on that. So how does Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corp become a signer on this as a part of this? How does that work? Because it says on the document, title of abstract under the MERS is the patent or is it the trademark?
well, but what
With
we
all the
have here
assigners.
is all across the country for quite some time, for a few years, like in California, the original MERS platform dissolved, and yet it was still being continued to be used in California. Well, you can't use a dissolved corporation. So there was a whole lot that came up about MERS, but what we found that across the country, we had one woman back east, and I can't remember her name, so I apologize, but she literally picked up the MERS name and used it, to show that it was just a placeholder. It was just a DBA. And so the actual patented MERS was not involved in most all of this. As what the MERS that's involved that you and I know is the MERS platform that you go on, the system that you go on to see if your home has MERS on it. And so, all across the country, in any state I looked into, there was a faux MERS entity that was Billy Bob down the street who just placed it on as a
So
DBA in the
anybody
state and then
anybody
started
can
using it.
be the imposter trustee or just an imposter
Mhm.
legal title holder. Is that correct?
Yes, and
How
then
do we know
and
who has?
MERS can't be a beneficiary. So MERS's name in whatever platform, even in their patented platform, excuse me, cannot be a beneficiary. They can't own loans. They are not a lender. They are not a true benefactor. They're again an imposter placeholder claiming to be there on behalf of, when MERS itself was nothing ever intended for that. It's always been a file cabinet. It's basically a file cabinet saying, here, you can go here and look at the system and see who has this, see who has that. It was never intended for how it was then bastardized and used. And I know that if you and I were to pull the documents out, that I'm afraid we would be spending forever
And
going through.
and
And
what we have
I would
going on
question
here,
anyone who had Countrywide to look.
right? So those are the legacy loans. And those are all so is it true that Patrick Joseph Sawyer was just taking advantage of all of the people who had Countrywide loans because Countrywide was not endorsing the notes? They weren't assigning the mortgages and recording those at the county register of deeds. So it was he just taking that all in as his because
Well,
of Countrywide's defective loans?
Well, let me answer that in a simple, it's not just countrywide. He took advantage of a system that's broken. He took advantage of a system that has no risk management and has a back door open that literally has a sign. If you can vision yourself going down the street with the guy who says stop and then waves you on, there is no guy at the back door of the software systems recording into the land records to say stop. It's literally a just come on through. And so he took advantage of the fact that, now think about this, he's a very young man. And as I put in the letter to him when I wrote it, I said, you're also a victim in a sense because you were raised in an atmosphere of title and escrow when cut and paste and tape was literally the norm. Literally the norm. This was a common practice. I've talked to people who've been in this, and I won't name them obviously, but they all said, oh, yeah, I actually quit a company back in the day, back, I think it was 2008, when I found out I looked in and I'm like, my God, he's cutting and pasting. And that some of those guys at that company got in huge trouble, but I walked away as soon as I saw it. And so
Well,
why
tell
it
us
has,
tell us about the whistleblower of that law firm in California
no,
who,
McCarthy and Holthus.
yes.
Yes, our Polly. We call her Polly. I got a phone call from Polly saying, "Hi, Billy, I am, and I have evidence for you because I worked for McCarthy and Holthus." And the biggest statement I took from her deposition, and we do have a deposition. It was lawful. It was sent to Duncan Hunter at the time in San Diego because this Polly lives in San Diego, and Duncan Hunter had it and he forwarded it on to the, I believe, Department of Justice. He forwarded it on to wherever he was supposed to forward it to, anyhow. But the problem we had is that a week later, Duncan Hunter himself was indicted for mismanagement of funds. So he, you can't make this stuff up, Renee. So, but Paulie's statement that resonates with me and will always stay with me is, Billy, my job was to create title where none exists. She would literally take documents out of one file of Mr. Smith with a notary on it, take that document of Mr. Smith, which has no correlation to his name, cut and paste, and put it with another file. She said this was what we were trained to do. And she told us, and it's on the deposition and it's online. Anybody can look up McCarthy and Holthus whistleblower on YouTube, and by William Wagner. He did it. She said it was what we were told to do. But when she realized and started looking into the actual laws of title and land records, she realized this is, whoa, I can't put my name to this. And so that was when her time ended fairly shortly after that with the company because she recognized that they were literally having her commit crimes,
But we also
felonies.
have another Polly by the name of E. Lance. I think her name is Elizabeth Lance in Pinellas County, California. No, it's not. Pinellas
Arizona.
County. No. It's
Oh, Florida.
Pinellas,
Florida.
Florida. And
Hmm.
she was responsible for her company, or I don't know how many forgers there are in that company, but I found that both the murder suicide involving the evictions in Claremont County, Ohio, um, led to that organization, Nationwide Title Clearing, as did the Arlecon murder suicide from that for fraud closure in Union County, New Jersey, I believe. And we have one here in Leelanau County that was recorded on Judge Marion Kumkowski's second home. And apparently she paid it off in 4 months. And this is all linked to the same title fabricators in Pinellas County, Nationwide Title Clearing. So we're going to be talking about that on the next podcast that we do. So yeah, we just cannot continue to allow our homes to be stolen. I mean, there are SWAT teams that are coming in. I know in Florida there was a SWAT team that came in to evict a veteran, and when they did, he committed suicide. And I remember seeing in his paperwork the Wilmington Trust, which we can trace directly back to guess who? Patrick Joseph Soria.
And he had many aliases. So
Yes, he
when
did.
people say he couldn't have done all these, well, when you recognize that this is a real estate fraud scheme that is a pattern known by the criminals for years how to simplify taking title. And when you have unendorsed notes, and I personally witnessed the shredding of documents, of mortgage documents at a title company, I witnessed the shredding. And the excuse given to me when I said, "Oh my gosh, you're shredding the wedding signature." Yeah, because the company only wants the note.
Can you tell us about your days at the largest one of the largest title companies when you were a title curator?
Well, I can tell you this much. It validated everything that we researchers had claimed was going on. It validated that these title companies and insurers can, on their own, omit things from the record and call it a mistake. But when you're actually in the middle of funding loans or funding, well, as we now know, these aren't loans, but we're going to stick with the terminologies for anybody listening. I saw debates going on when I would say, look, you can't do this title policy for this party because there's a trustee who is not even noticed of this new transaction. This party involved had 4 different transactions going on, of which each property had a trustee overseeing it that would have to be contacted because they would have to sign off on everything. I refused to work on the file, but I kept noticing it popping up as it was these 4 files were still in process. So to me, I knew then it validated everything I knew. I got in trouble for asking a lot of questions. And all of us older, I will call us the older generation of title and escrow and real
So
estate.
the millennials were the ones that were taught to just move these down the assembly line and don't worry about
Don't ask questions, just do what you're told.
do what you're
This is
told.
how, this is our procedure, and this is what you do. So, in fact, when you're trafficking in unendorsed notes, and they actually are destroyed and digitally reformatted, you now have a document that can be, any name can be placed on. And we
Right.
know that these unendorsed notes have showed up. You had, I think, Rory Woods, I
Roy
think you have a
Woods.
document. Tell us
I
about that.
did I did an audit on her one of her she has 2 properties that were stolen from her. Her primary residence had a note. I mean, we had the note from all her documents and we had a date of the note. And so I went into the MERS database and found another note. I think it was 3 months after that date on the note. They had created a second note, and we do have the video from that. I did a video on it, and Rory and I will be doing a separate show on that to show you how the documents are counterfeited. And the problem that you have there is when Countrywide was buying up all these notes, they weren't actually taking legal or lawful, um, what would you call it?
Transfers. There were
Possession
no lawful transfers. Mhm.
transfers. Okay. And but they did take your identity. And I remember my identity being, I first noticed the alt my identity was being stolen right after we closed on, right after Huntington Bank. Well, I guess Wyler Mortgage sent the mortgage or sold the mortgage to Huntington. It was supposed to go to Fannie Mae. It did go to Fannie Mae. It went to Countrywide. And right after that, is when I noticed my identity was stolen. And it has continued to be stolen for years and years and years. And I recently was in a court. Someone filed a lawsuit against me. Um, and the company is Portfolio Servicing. I think it's Associates, Portfolio so Recovery Associates. And actually, it was dismissed with prejudice. But the attorney was very outspoken. I said, "Well, how do I protect myself from all of these attorneys from Portfolio having my name, my social security number, my address on their home computers?" Because she said, "Oh, we all work from home." And she said, when I asked that question, she said, "Well, when you apply for credit, we all share your information." And so that's how it's done.
And that's how you'll find your name changed where your children's names have been used, right down to your grandchildren. Any names that go on a document giving social security numbers at all, your entire family's name has been taken. So these unendorsed notes, and maybe we can end with this and I'll have you make a last statement. These unendorsed notes are being, from what I was told by a previous over 35-year white collar crime investigator and prosecutor, found that within 3 to 6 months of that wedding signature, that digitalized document has traded a minimum of 1,300 times.
Wow. Okay, I guess we'll close with that. Thank you everyone for watching. Our next episode will be a little bit more descriptive and in-depth into the deaths that are behind these fake documents. So I am investigating two
Well, Renee,
families, and we're going to stay on top of that.
Lady Hawk, great job. Always have the eye of the hawk from the sky looking down, and we are definitely benefiting from your work and your knowledge and what you're bringing together across the country. So thank you for all your work, and until the next time, bye.